Hello and welcome to the webinar. Today we'll be discussing summer stress for the landscape and how to solve for that. I'm your host. My name is Emmett Muennink. I'm the South Central Technical Manager for Arborjet. I live in the Texas area. I've been with Arborjet for 11 years. Prior to that, I was the plant healthcare manager for a Dallas area tree care company. I've been a certified arborist since 2011 and a board certified master arborist since 2017. I went to school at Texas Tech. I have a bachelor's degree in agronomy and a master's degree in crop science. Okay, so a little bit about what we're going to be covering today. Uh, Symptoms of summer stress. What is that? What does that mean? Does that mean that the kids are home from school and the parents are getting stressed out? Or does it mean that your landscape maybe not looking so great? We're going to talk about some management strategies for that stress, look at a little bit of research, and then kind of recap and put together a plan of some next steps, followed by some Q&A. All right, let's jump into it. Okay, so on the left-hand side, you can see a screenshot that I took of my weather app recently. It was rather warm, you could say. And this other photo on the right, that's a turfed area up in the Kansas City market that's near a hotel I stay in when I visit that area. And you can see that grass is just torched out. So that is what summer stress looks like on a lawn situation. And so some early symptoms of summer stress or heat and drought stress, when you're mowing your lawn, or if you see a mowed area, when you see that grass stay laid flat after the lawnmower's gone over it, so you can see the tire tracks or you can see where footprints are where somebody's walked through there and the grass doesn't pick itself back up, that's because that grass has entered into drought stress and it's unable to regain its turgidity after that lawnmower or somebody's walked across there. And then in this photo, you can see it's gone past further into that and it's starting to torch out and get very brown. You can notice where there's sprinkler inefficiencies and maybe the sprinkler heads are not working in certain areas, becomes a lot more noticeable. Okay, as it pertains to more landscape plants, something that you're going to see initially is called acute deficit, which is the temporary wilting point. And so if any of you watching today, if you garden, maybe you garden some tomatoes or peppers or whatever you like to have out there, in the afternoon after that hot day, you might go out there and see your plants are looking kind of sad, right? So their leaves are going to be a little bit curled and wilty and droopy and sad. And if you put some water on that plant, maybe in a couple of hours, that plant's going to perk right back up. Or maybe the next morning you go and look at it and it'll have perked back up. However, if you don't get water back onto that plant, what's going to happen is you're going to move from the acute deficit or the temporary wilting point into a chronic deficit. And a chronic deficit, or when you reach that permanent wilting point, that's when you're going to begin to see those leaves starting to get crispy and dry. And I really like this picture in the center of the screen because what you're able to see is how that water has receded from the leaf margin toward the center of the leaf. And so that's always something good to look at as an indicator of, hey, this is actually a drought stress or a water stress problem that we're dealing with here. And then on the far right, what you see is a tree that has entered the permanent wilting point. And what that means is that the tree is unable to regain its turgidity after being exposed to a saturated environment. So even if you were able to get water back on that tree, those leaves, they have already gotten to the point where they're not going to green back up. They're not going to perk back up. That tree's probably going to defoliate. And if possible, it'll leaf back out. Some other symptoms of chronic drought stress is you may notice some bark splitting or oozing. This is something that I noticed a couple of years ago when we were in some really, really dry weather for an extended period of time. And what's going on there with this splitting or oozing is that you're going to see or what's going on with the tree is that the cells actually constrict, right? So the tree, it contains a lot of water when it's at full capacity. And so as it dries out, those cells begin to constrict and shrink and get smaller. And then so what's happened on the exterior of the tree is as that tissue has constricted, it begins to split and break apart. You'll notice it is kind of like I call it a vertical split. It runs parallel to the trunk of the branches. And then out of there comes kind of this thick resin or ooze out of those fissures. If you're in this chronic drought stress where the tree's constantly exposed to these drought conditions, you begin to see branch tip dieback, and the tree will get attacked by wood borers and other opportunistic pathogens and diseases. So, what exactly is happening? The term drought stress gets thrown around a lot, especially where I live in Texas. Oh, things are a bit droughty. We're dealing with some drought stress right now. People kind of toss that term out real cavalier. Oh, yeah, it's just kind of dry. It's kind of droughty right now. And I don't think there's much thought put into, well, hey, how is that affecting the plants in our landscape? Because it's actually very, very detrimental, especially if they reach that permanent wilting point or even get close to it, honestly. And so to kind of summarize what's going on inside of a tree or any other landscape plant, drought happens or drought stress happens when transpiration exceeds water availability. It's a very simple way of looking at it. It's kind of like a math equation, water in versus water out. That plant is utilizing more water than what's available to it. That creates that deficit, and now you're running into issues. And so when that happens, the plants sense the stress, and that triggers a hormone response within inside of the plant. The hormone that's triggered is called abscisic acid, and that plant or tree sends it up to the foliage. Abscisic acid is what's responsible for the opening and closing of the stomates in the leaves. And so the stomates close in the leaves. That reduces photosynthesis. Basically, the tree is shutting things down. Transpiration is not happening anymore. And so when photosynthesis stops, the plant is no longer producing all of the food, the proteins, the carbohydrates, the hormones, and other things that are associated with proper physiological functioning. Then the plant cells will begin to desiccate and dry out, causing wilt and eventual necrosis. And then here's kind of the kicker. This is sort of the unknown, right? So this is below ground. The dry soils that are associated with these intense dry periods, it actually causes a lot of root loss, right? So with trees, it's well understood that the majority of the absorbing roots are in the top 12 to 18 inches of soil. And so if we enter into this dry period and it doesn't rain for a couple of months, that soil begins to dry out. Well, if you have all those absorbing roots, those root hairs, those fine absorbing roots start to dry out as well. And so there's actually a fair amount of root loss that's associated with dry periods of time. And so why this is important is once water is added back to that landscape, well, that plant has lost most of its absorbing roots. And so it's going to have a hard time even getting that water that has been put back into the situation. All right, so let's talk about some drought management strategies. And some of the most important things you can do is to plant drought-tolerant species. It's often talked about the right tree, right place. And that's very, very true. When you have a tree that's, I'll use maples as an example because people like to plant maples in Texas and they just don't do very well. The same with river birch. And so you want the right tree in the right place. You want to, if you live in a droughty climate or an area that experiences drought on a regular basis, hey, why don't you go with a dry site species, something that's native that you know can tolerate these dry periods of time. You want to avoid planting trees during the summer months. Young trees coming out of a nursery or that get dug, they go through a lot of stress as they're transported on a truck. Who knows how many miles. get stuck in the ground. They don't have much shade. You're depending on irrigation that may or may not work properly. And so summer plantings tend to run into a lot of problems. Something great that you can do is to optimize your irrigation systems and schedules. Work with a licensed irrigator to audit irrigation systems. If you're working with a homeowner, it's a good idea to get in touch with the irrigation specialist. Get things checked out. Make sure you don't have those sprinkler inefficiencies, or maybe you can install a tree-specific zone with some bubblers. Or you can hand water and use soaker hoses. Really, I tell people you really want to flood trees during dry periods. You want to flood those trees maybe once a week or just twice a month, something like that, to get a really heavy dose of water on trees if you can. You don't want to overdo it and keep those soils too saturated. But like I said, just once a week or a couple of times a month is really going to go a long ways. Mulch rings, very, very beneficial. Mulch reduces the temperature in the soil, keeps it from getting so hot, and it also helps to trap moisture in the soil. It's going to reduce evaporative loss of soil, evaporative water loss in the soil. So mulch rings, very, very good drought management tool. And then finally, you can consider some agronomic solutions, which is what we're going to get into right now. So something that's super beneficial and a really cool technology is called a hygroscopic humectant. And so those are two big words. So hygroscopic describes a substance that tends to absorb moisture from air. And then a humectant, it means that it retains or preserves that moisture. Says it refers to a substance used to reduce the loss of moisture. And so hygroscopic absorbs moisture from the air, humectant holds that moisture. And so the reason I put a picture of a glazed donut up there on the screen is you've probably all had donuts at one time or another brought to you at your shop, and everybody pigs out on them first thing in the morning. And there may be 2 or 3 brave soldiers that make it through into the afternoon hours, and maybe you come back later in the day and you flip the lid up on that donut box, and what you might see there is a really sad, kind of soggy looking donut. And that's because the sugar glaze that's on the outside of it is actually hygroscopic. It actually absorbs humidity from the air, and it makes that sugar get sad and soggy looking. And then humectants are used in everyday products like lotions. It's in toothpaste. That's why your tube of toothpaste is always soft, because it has humectants inside of there that helps to retain moisture. And so there's a few landscape products that actually use a hygroscopic humectant technology. One of them is Hydrotain. And so the way this works is it's applied over the top of the soil. You can then water it in, or if you're applying it to landscape plants and trees, you can do like a deep root feed with this Hydrotain component. And it's going to actually coat the root system of the plants. And then as moisture leaves the soil through evaporation, right? Evaporation, water is leaving as a vapor. Vapor is unavailable to plant roots. And so with Hydrotain and the hygroscopic humectants, it's able to act like a magnet for those water molecules, condense them to form a droplet that is then absorbed by the plant roots. So think of it that way. It's like a magnet for water, traps that vapor, condenses it to a droplet that can then be utilized by the plant root system. This is just a little bit of research highlighting how Hydrotain performed to other products that are in that wetting agent category. So wetting agents as a whole, there's a ton of them offered by many different distributors. A lot of distributors have their own brand of wetting agents. And what a wetting agent is, generally it's like a surfactant. Generally, a wetting agent helps to penetrate hydrophobic soils, or it helps to disperse that water laterally throughout the soil profile. And so this research was done by Mark Mahady in Florida. He's a turf consultant. And so he was comparing these various different popular wetting agents, including Hydrotain, which falls into that category. And then they reduced the irrigation to the turf grass. So this was under 40% deficit irrigation. And so they applied these wetting agents and then exposed the turf grass to a deficit. And so what he found is that with hydrotane, they had the most consistent positive trend and the highest level of coverage of the Bermuda grass. They had extended and enhanced turf grass color. They had higher levels of quality. And then here it goes back to my point about root loss that's associated with drought stress. With the hydrotane treatment, they had a 16.9% increase in root surface area versus a 13.4% reduction in root surface area in the untreated chet. And so they were able to maintain a higher quality turf and a higher quality root system when utilizing hydrotane. And so here are some of the products that are available that are made with hydrotane or with the humectant technology. So you've got Lesco Moisture Manager. That's available as a granular as well as a liquid. You have Hydrotane ES Plus, also available as a granular or a liquid. NutriRoot, which is an Arborjet product that contains it's a 223 fertilizer with micronutrients. It has seaweed extract as well as a potassium humate. And then on top of that, the humectants and a surfactant to help with that soil penetration. So NutriRoot is a really kind of do it all in one product. And then another product that's very similar to NutriRoot is called Foreplay. It has the same components as NutriRoot. It just does not have the fertilizer analysis or the micronutrients. So you can kind of see on that slide, it says 76% hydrotane, 9.5% C extra, that's the seaweed extract, 4.5% humate, and then a 10% non-ionic surfactant. So Foreplay is a really great product if you're wanting to get these root enhancement benefits out of the seaweed extract and the humates, but not have any of the nutrients. So if you're really in hot, dry temperatures, it might be beneficial to not have the nutrient components that are in NutriRoot and just utilize that Foreplay technology. So I kind of just covered NutriRoot. We introduced this product about 11 years ago whenever I first started with Arborjet. And it was designed to enhance plant establishment. As you know, with Arborjet, a big chunk of what we do, a lot of our business is geared around ash trees and treating ash trees for emerald ash borer. But what we saw is there's still a lot of trees and ash trees in particular that were being removed from the landscape, and then people are coming back installing new trees. Those new trees may not make it through the first year, and so it turns into this big cycle of removing and replacing trees. And so our goal with NutriRoot was to enhance tree establishment and reduce tree failure after installation. The way to do this is by enhancing root development. And so that grade 223, it's a very low dose of fertilizer, just kind of a booster fertilizer to get things kicked off and started. It also has the seaweed extract and the hydrotane. And so the idea is to enhance root development and then hold water in that soil profile or reduce the loss of water in that soil profile so to create a healthy root environment. You can see here, these are some photos that we took on some bald and burlap pear trees when we were researching this product. Basically, the treated trees had 2.7 times more root mass at the end of the season from getting a couple applications of NutriRoot as compared to water alone. So lots of benefits to this product, lots of places to use it, root development, transplant success, water stress management, micronutrient deficiencies. It does have a significant amount of iron, manganese, and zinc. It can be used in sandy soils, dry soils, trees that are stressed during those summer months. It's a good place to use it. Pre-winter stress, or if you're dealing with hydrophobic soils. So there's lots of different places. And as I was saying, this product, it really is a do-it-all. It's got a little bit of everything in it. And so that's kind of a Swiss Army knife when you're looking for a product that you can apply it in terms of a deep root feeding application for trees. So some of the feedback that we got on NutriRoot is, hey, we love this stuff. It's working great, However, when it comes to installing trees, our crews that plant trees, they don't have a water trailer, or they don't have a spray tank on the truck where they can make this application. It'd be really great if you had a granular version so that they can just sprinkle it into the growing or the planting hole and get all the benefits. And so that's what prompted us to come out with NutriRoot Granular. So NutriRoot Granular is very similar to NutriRoot Liquid. It's just in a granular form. You'll see the grade is a little bit different. It's a 333, and that's just to have a balanced analysis. Instead of the 223, it's a 333. Very, very similar. This can be used when planting trees. It's also really cool to use as a backfill amendment. If you're doing work with the supersonic air knife, and you want to incorporate some compost or things like that into the root system, this is a really great product for that. You can just sprinkle a few handfuls into the area that you excavated, and see some really nice results from that. Look at the analysis. So 333 also has iron, manganese, zinc. We'll see the humectant component, the surfactant component, as well as the humic acid and seaweed extract. So really a lot going on in a very nice granular formulation. This container that it's in is a 5.8-pound container, and it contains 15 cups of NutriRoot Granular in that. And so you can use this in bed maintenance. You're basically looking at 1.5 to 2 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So one of those containers would be able to do 3,500 square feet of beds. And when you're doing tree installation, you're looking about a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup per caliper inch of tree. And so with that 15-cup container, you'd be able to treat 32-inch caliper trees at installation. And then when it comes to smaller plants and shrubs, you're looking at a 1/4 cup per 1 to 3 gallon pot. And so about 60 potted plants per container. So really, that one 5.8-pound jug, it can cover a bit of ground. You can stretch it pretty far. This is really impressive to me. Just the top growth on these cranberries during some of our research on this product. The top growth is fantastic to see, but just look at that root mass. I mean, that's a significant increase in rooting on these things. And so it sounds really cheesy, but when I talk about NutriRoot and some of our other products, I tell people if you have healthy soils, healthy roots, you'll have healthy trees. And that really goes a long way. And so the better root mass that you have, the more access to water your plants are going to have, as well as nutrients. And so these results are just 2 months after that treatment. Okay, so this is some of the work that I did on my own. This is at my church, and I wanted to show you these trees. Unfortunately, my church got sold some builder grade trees. They weren't great to begin with. And then unfortunately, these were kind of on the end of the irrigation. They have bubblers, but they're kind of on the end of that zone. And so they just didn't get a lot of water. You can see that tree on the left with the branch tip dieback is pretty substantial. And they've basically been dying since they were put in the ground. And so this year, I really wanted to help these trees out and get them growing again. And so I came in with the supersonic air knife, and I did a root collar excavation on these. And I backfilled that area with cow compost blended with NutriRoot Granular. And these photos were taken 45 days after I'd done that treatment. And so root collar excavation, backfill with NutriRoot Granular mixed with cow compost, and then I came back with mulch over the top. And so I've been blown away with how well these trees have been doing this year from that application. And so that's just a really good look at this one tree, just the difference that can make getting that tree to root better, as well as those nutrients that are provided in this formulation. So really a cool product that can have some very rapid and visual results. So in conclusion, drought combined with high temperatures is very detrimental to overall plant health. Uh, something that I learned early on, sort of my mentor, he'd say, drought is a life-changing event for trees, and it really can be because it shuts down everything that's going on. All the plant processes get shut down during some severe drought. And so if you can combine some sound cultural practices with a proper agronomic program, you can do a lot of good things to reduce the impacts of drought and summer stress. And if you can have a great root system and a moisture management program, you're going to be very successful. On the right, you can see that QR code. So go ahead and take advantage of that and request a free sample of Nutrient Granular. If you just want to skip past that, Nutrient Granular is available through all of our distributors. And so contact your preferred distributor and go ahead and get one of those 5.8-pound containers. Looking ahead to the future, we probably will be coming out with a larger size bag of Nutrient Granular as it starts to take off throughout the industry. But for now, go ahead and get some to try it out. You can get this free sample, try it out on some of your potted plants at home. And get us some feedback, get us some more photos to use in our presentations, and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you.